Now you're going to see how it's done. It's Dave Robinson.
The music business is a cruel and shallow money trench, a long plastic hallway where thieves and pimps run free and good men die like dogs. Recognize that? There is also a negative side. Hunter S. Thompson said this. This is probably Lee Thompson here. hold the beginning, Dave. Fuck off, Lee. He said that, and he wasn't wrong. We've all been part of it in some way. In my youth, I was a photographer in Dublin, doing all the general stuff that young photographers do, weddings, a lot of kids. Go on, smile. All the stuff you need. I had a very big prop, which was a big blow-up bottle of Guinness, and if I could get somebody to hold it, it was worth money. Just the holding, I would click very quickly, and we were in with a few bob. To set the scene, it's early 60s here, but in Irish time it's more like 1812. So show bands are where it's at. There was a magazine called Spotlight, and I was lucky enough to become their official photographer, which meant that I kind of traveled the country. Every town had a show band, 7-piece group, 7 or 8 piece, with brass. And they did the chart, and they did country and western, they did quite a few, they do a few Irish diddly-eye songs as well. Interesting thing about them was that they never stopped. They would play these very big sheds in rural Ireland, and they would keep playing for 4 hours. Halfway through, half of the band would go and have their dinner, and the other half would change instruments until they had time to have their dinner. There would always be a parish priest who would come to the gigs, not to be friendly or nice, just to irritate everybody. He'd be watching his parishioners. The bands, a very interesting thing that the groups had, people in Ireland at that time had trouble men and women talking to each other. I mean, they just didn't. And so the men would go to the pub, and at 11 o'clock, the band's still playing, they would arrive. The band worked out a system which I thought was really interesting. I was learning all the time, watching people, and they would do 3 songs in a set. They'd have a slow foxtrot set, or they'd have a quick step set. And it meant that people didn't have to talk to one another. You could ask a girl to dance by just going and looking at her, and then you could get through 3 songs without having to have a conversation, and the band would then say, "That's all for now," and you would leave and you wouldn't have said a word. Very Irish. Once an hour they would, there'd be a lady's choice, and that's where the boys would find out whether they were actually kind of getting anywhere. But it was all done by semaphore, you know, it was quite bizarre. I went all around the 26 counties, the six, okay, all right. So, 6 counties in the north. A lot of the show bands had their own style. So you had a band of the Freshmen who came from Newry, and the Freshmen specialised in Beach Boy harmonies, and they were great at it. So, you know, there was other Joe Dolan and the Drifters. There was the Royal Show Band, whose big song was called the Hucklebuck, which was a very big song from Louisiana at the time, but that was their very big song. So that's how all the meeting, all the kind of boy meets girl happened in Ireland. In the towns, and particularly Dublin, it was the tennis clubs where you had a four-piece or a five-piece band playing exactly the same idea, charts, covers, nothing original. There was nothing original at that time. So Saturday night all over Ireland, that's what was happening. You'd see donkeys outside. I would go to a big shed in the middle of nowhere, and it would be 6 donkeys tied to the bikes outside. It was very rural, it was very backward. At the end of the night, a very interesting thing would happen where the promoter, the guy who owned the big warehouse, and the leader of the show band would meet at the very end of the night, and they would write in their diaries the number of people who had actually attended. So 3,500, which would be regular, would turn out to 350. And so as long as they knew in their diary what was happening, then the tax worked out very well. There was a gentleman called Albert Reynolds, and he had a pet food business, and he owned 2 huge ballrooms. He went on to be the Prime Minister of Ireland, and I remember him with his diary, 350, you know. Anyway, that's the way Ireland style works. So I went to England. I went in and out of England wanting to become a better photographer, and went to a few clubs and had some great nights in London. So I brought that idea back to Dublin because there was no beat clubs. What I call beat clubs, kind of the Two Eyes in Camden Street and various other places that I went to. And I opened the very first beat club in Dublin. It's called Sound City. And it was marvellous. There was no alcohol involved, and there was no real maintenance involved. So, Coke and Fanta and, 600 people in a space for probably could hold 150 respectively. But it was great stuff. And, I had a lot of good things happening with the club. And I also went to London and I had Rave magazine. I had a Rave, which were like a pop magazine in colour. And that was pretty good. And the kind of jobs that, on one occasion I was sent up to Liverpool to photograph 10 Liverpool bands. I had the names and they just wanted photographs. One of them turned out to be the Beatles at lunchtime in the Cavern. And I didn't really hear that great sound, you know what I mean? Later it worried me that I hadn't really resonated to it. But all the bands were playing the same songs. It was all Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and, a Twist and Shout. There was at least 3 groups playing that song. I remember Paul McCartney, which later on became very usable. I remember him being really friendly. He reached out to me as a photographer, saying, to make a connection. I didn't remember John much. He certainly didn't come anywhere near me. So I also got an opportunity for Rave to do the very first Rolling Stones tour of Ireland, and a lot of my photographs doing that were of palms of hands. They didn't want to be photographed. They didn't like anybody. They were kind of miserable kind of people, except for Charlie Watts, who was a very good guy and very friendly. So that was what we did then at that time. I put on a lot of young Irish Dublin bands, 4-piece bands, which we've all been involved in. And one in particular was called the Black Eagles. The lead singer's name was Phil Lynott, and the drummer's father was the manager, so they had blazers with gold buttons and black polo neck sweaters and black slacks. But Phil had a pair of white gloves on. He always had a touch, and the young girls were crazed about him. He was only about 15 or 16 at the time. And I went through his career quite a bit. He was in and out of my sight in various shapes and forms. And he still is, remarkably, because he's buried 3 graves away from my mother. So his fans walk over my mother's grave. And my sister complains to me like I can do something about it, you know. It's incredible. We're going to see how good this man was, though. In his heyday, he was a happener. The boys are back in town. You might have been on the receiving end, well, maybe not, but you would have heard one of Phil's big chat-up lines was, have you any Irish in you? Would you like a bit? It worked wonders. It's a remarkable thing. I tried it a few times, didn't go anywhere. So, Them, a band that I had photographed a couple of times, because I knew Van, and so we had chatted, comes Northern Irish, we knew the same kind of musical beginning. Oh, thank you. I thought you were going to give me another, sorry. They broke up because Van had just discovered, them band was very unusual in England at the time. They got £30 a week. Now most of the groups are scrabbling around, and £30 regularly was a very big thing, and people, the other groups knew about it. It was something to aspire to. And Van discovered that the £30 a week was mainly covered from what he considered to be his songwriting royalties. So he thought, I'm not paying them. And he split the band immediately. Philip Solomons, who was his manager, he dumped at that time. And he came back to Belfast, which is not a place to return to unless you're in a limo. You know what I mean? They take the piss, you know. Double brandy for me, Van, you know, here it's going well. So he got fed up with Belfast and came down to Dublin, to the club, to the Sound City. And he hung around for a while, and what was remarkable about Van, I found, is that he would just, with his harmonica, he would join group for a couple of numbers, and that group would play better for those 2 numbers than they'd ever played in their whole lives before. I thought, what has this man got? What is it? So I gave him he had nowhere to stay, so he came and stayed at my flat, which was a mistake. He was the most miserable flat ever. He just had no idea of small talk, you know what I mean? If you said good morning to him, he thought you were kind of insulting him in some way, you know. So you didn't talk to him, so he was kind of an elephant in the room all the time. The other thing he did is he smoked, as we all did, and he would tap his ash on his thigh and rub it in. So he was always wandering around in a little haze of ash and smelling a bit like, you know, an ashtray. Bert Burns, who had produced Here Comes the Night and Baby Please Don't Go, was on the phone, and he would give me the phone. He wanted me to he wanted a manager. He didn't really want to deal with it. And I realised I knew nothing about it. And Van's not a one to have passengers around. You know, there's no way you could kind of bluff your way as a manager when you knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about it. But I encouraged him to go, because I said, well, Bert Burns has made you these hits. You know, he's got a record label in America. He's prepared to put you up and give you a salary and whatever. So to give Van his due, he asked me to go with him, but I thought it wouldn't be something that would happen, and I would get my flat back. I was kind of quite keen at that point to do that. So we're going to see here, Baby Please Don't Go, mimed on Ready Steady Go. And the announcer has real trouble with the grammar of them and Baby Please Don't Go, and you can see that happened. Interesting thing is that Van had a harmonica solo, and he had forgotten his harmonica. You can see this. And so he's trying to get somebody to give him a harmonica before the harmonica solo comes up. It's kind of amusing kind of thing. Baby Please Don't Go.
Thank you, group from Belfast with an old standard, Baby Please Don't Go. Here is, or here they are, anyhow, they are them.
Incredible band, first of all, and the other thing is, what a great show, Ready Steady Go. I mean, it was fantastic. How difficult can it be now with all the TV, techno, blah blah blah, for them to have a decent music show, you know, that you can actually watch from time to time? All that crap that they've got going on. There was a group called The People, not a great name, in Blackpool. And on one of the shows that we did in Scotland, a lady came up to me and said, I remember The People in Blackpool, and she had a kind of look in her eye, she had a kind of smile that kind of drew you to several conclusions, which could be wrong, but it was an interesting group. The People, Henry McCulloch, the guitar player, Chrissy Stewart, the bass player, who went on, and Dave Lutton, who went on to T-Rex as a drummer. Henry played with Wings and the Grease Band, and he was a great player. I met him in a show band. Van had been in a show band as well. So they needed photographs and had no money, like a good band don't. So I took them as high in Dublin as I could. There wasn't a big circuit, and having worked on them for a few months, that was as good as it got. There was one TV show in Ireland, and if you got to the height of the Irish scene and market, you got the Late Late Show, and that was it. After that, you had to go to London. You had to find a British company to look after you. I mean, U2 is a perfect example. They did a showcase for 11 British labels in the same venue with the same crowd. By the end of it, the crowd were totally exhausted because they were expected to give their best to try and influence the British labels who came over, and nobody took the slightest bit of attention to them, really. So that's another story, and we will get to it. The people got as high as you could go. I had flogged my cameras and backed them up as much as I could, and I decided that the music business in Ireland, at this point the club had been cloned by 12 or 15 other people, so there was 15 clubs in Dublin now playing with the same set of bands. It was got a little boring. I thought I'll go back to England and I'll get my cameras together. You know, I had some quite expensive, interesting cameras. So I told the band, thank you, that's as much as I can do, and headed for London. Now, in London, there was a kind of an Irish thing, and I learned from a couple of people that you could do 2 shifts in certain factories, so you under 2 different names. So, for example, you had 2 8-hour shifts. I went to British Leyland, and we were making London's buses and the army vehicles where they put all the best stuff in. So I was David Robinson, on one set of identity papers, and I was David Lettuce on another set. The lettuce came from the fact that when they asked me for the second name, my brain went blank, but I saw this picture of a lettuce on the wall. So it just shows you what can happen. The idea was you worked for 6 months in England, 2 shifts, slept for a shift, 2 shifts, and you could get that money back, that tax money back. So it was a kind of a big lump sum. You were doing pretty good. Anyway, I was doing it to get the money, and one day a few stones on my window, and it's the people. They found out where I am, and they like me so much. They've joined me in London. They had a Commer van they were sleeping in, 3 cylinders only working, so they're in a bit of a state. And I did let them into my place. I had a small flat, but they wouldn't keep quiet, and they wouldn't, late at night. And I got thrown out. So we're all in the van now, right? And I get 3 gigs for them, 2 very average gigs, but one at the Blarney Club in Tottenham Court Road. Now that was an traditional Irish dancing place, but Haight-Ashbury and the underground and the drugs from America were starting to happen in London, so the bubbles were going up the wall, and people were smoking a great deal of hash was the big thing at that time. So we went. I thought, the gig, we get there for 7, we'll be on first. And it turned out that there was Irish dancing going on when we got there early. And the guy said, what? What? He said, no, the weirdos don't come till after 12, So that night, the Procol Harum were the top of the bill, and a group called the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, amazing group of people, were second. The people came on at about 4 in the morning, and there was like 75 people left asleep on the floor. But they were good. They had really, they were as good as anything Ireland was producing at the time. And they got up there and they did it, and the crowd got up, and it was a very satisfactory. I thought, this is fantastic. So there's a load of people, University of Brunel, I remember, the social secretary, who was offered a 75 quid to do a gig in a couple of weeks. At that time, the band were getting a fiver for this gig, so 75 was, whoa, and I'm writing it down thinking this could be it. 2 or 3 people have money here. And there was a guy with round glasses, very John Lennon, and a small droopy moustache, and he was hanging there, and he said, look, you should talk to me before you talk to anyone else. And I was going, yeah, but 75, I mean, have you got a gig? Sorry. He said, no, just talk to me. And the promoter luckily came by and said, Dave, you should talk to him. That's Mike Jeffries, the manager of Jimi Hendrix. And I said, Mike. I should do it. So he wasn't there to be a talent scout. That wasn't his thing. He was kind of a money man, Mike Jeffries. He'd burnt down, it turned out, I found out later, he'd burnt down his club, the Club of Go-Go in Newcastle, to get the money to make the Animals' first album, for example. I met the man who actually did the firing of the place. So he wanted an Irish band. That was his big thing. You are Irish. And I said, yeah, no, yes, of course I am Irish. He said, but the band, they're Irish. Because Gibraltar was a big thing between Spain and... He had 4 clubs in Mallorca. And he normally got English groups to go over there for the summer. But the Spanish had closed off all British work permits because of Gibraltar. They were doing a thing with the British Foreign Office, whatever. So he said, you are an Irish band? I said, yeah, no, Irish. Yeah, we are. What I didn't tell him, of course, is that they were all from Northern Ireland and they all had British passports. So I had to rush to Dublin to try and... Now, the Irish civil servants are very slow, and it took about 4 months to get a passport in Southern Ireland, the Republic as it's called. And also, the band objected to the idea that they would get a Southern Irish passport. They said, well, we'll get killed. We'll get killed. The word will come out. We'll all be dead. I said, look, don't tell anybody. Let's see if we can get the passports for it. Luckily, there was an old girlfriend of mine that I had parted on good relations, was in a very important position in the Irish visa department. And that's a lesson for all of us to learn. Try and part from your partners reasonably. You never know when you need it. So I got the passports in about 8 days, which is, magic, really. Off we went to Mallorca in the 3-cylinder Comer. We nearly died a few times on the way down. And it was fantastic. We're in Mallorca. We're playing in 3 different clubs, 2 sets a night. The girls come every week and then leave at the end of the week. So everyone's having a great time. It's really phenomenal. And Chaz Chandler, who turned out to be Mike's partner and who had discovered Jimmy in New York and signed him up. He was the music man, bass player from the Animals, obviously. And Chaz, as I got to know him, never pushed. He never thought he was the great bass player. He thought, he was a functional kind of guy. He came out anyway on holiday, saw the people, come and see me, and we'll have a chat. This could be good. So I said, great. When you're a small band with small ideas, having a good holiday, and it was great. You know what that's like when people come and tell you, by the way, I might be able to. Anyway, I'm having a great time in Mallorca, and one day in the evening I'm wearing a pair of shorts, no shoes, singlet, lovely, tanned, looking good. I'm picked up by the Guardia Civil. And that was the Franco period. I mean, Franco, they had those funny hats, that looked like a kind of a bullfighter going backwards, this kind of thing. So I'm put into a cell, and there's 35 people, and they're all people I know from the the beaches and the kind of clubs and the hip crowd. So we worked out in talking to one another that we all went to these two South Africans' flat to score a bit of hash and grass and stuff, as you do. And they must have been filming it. That's what was going on. So everybody gradually has been taken out. Oh, the cells are just appalling. You know, they're absolutely dreadful. Tiled, a whole latrine in the corner of each one. You know what I mean? You're trying to get all your friends to look the other way while you had to do the business. So terrible. And they all trickling out and they don't come back. So on the end of the second day, everybody trying to shuffle behind everybody else so as not to go next. They finally got to me. Now, I had worked it out at this point. My passport, the Irish passport, is half in Gaelic. So I decided I could not speak any language at all except Gaelic. So they're trying English and they're trying Spanish and they're trying all the thing, and I am trying to remember every bit of school that I've ever had in Gaelic. And gradually, there's me and one Turkish guy who had been the kind of beach bully. He used to, bodybuilder, he used to really push people around. He's now crying about how he badly treated his girlfriend, and if God would only give him this. And I'm thinking, oh fuck, I'm gonna spend fucking forever with this geezer. So suddenly, I'm whipped out. Suddenly, it's like whip out. I think, oh, I'm for it. Whatever it is that they've given the rest, I'm going to get it. No, into a taxi. Nobody can speak to me because I only speak Gaelic, and I'm not told anything. Taken to the airport and put on the plane. Now, I've been in there for 4 days. I hadn't had any clothes change or anything. I was sleeping on the floor of the tiles, whatever, the cockroaches. So I get a kind of a fairly clear space on the plane. You know, people get away from me. Arrive in London, barefoot, dirty clothes, homeless, and it turned out that Mike Jeffries had some kind of supposedly MI5 connection, and which, you know, I was terribly pleased. And he had worked some, you know, cool thing. The band now had already been taken home, so now we're in Hampstead. Now we're doing even better. We're in a great house in Hampstead, and there's talk of us supporting Jimmy on a couple of Savile Theatre shows. So it's just fantastic. It's just marvellous. This is really good. Around this time, I'm due to go to Chaz's flat and have a business meeting about what it means about the band and what's going to happen. Mike Jeffries and Chaz had now got to go together, and they'd renamed the band, without particularly asking anyone, called the Heir Apparent. They thought it was really funny, E-I-R-E, which was the Irish thing. So the Heir Apparent, they didn't go back to Belfast very often with that name, but we're now, you know, happening. What are we doing?
You're going to Chaz's flat for a meeting.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. You have to have also a prompter, it's very important. I'm due to go up to Chaz's flat, dressed up for the night in Edgware Road, George Street, just a marble arch there. So I get to the flat, and the bell doesn't ring. There's no ding dong, right? And I'm pressing it, thinking I've got the wrong place, right? And this figure, it's a glass door. This figure comes through the door, and it opens. And this guy with a big head of hair and about 300 rollers in it, right? And I'm thinking, what? Where? And also he's got a kind of a sarong, a very, very kind of oriental kind of dressing gown business on that doesn't quite cover the crown jewels, really. So I'm trying to look him in the eye without kind of looking down. And he just points, he just gestures. And I thought I was in the wrong place. I don't know what's happening. So I go in, and there's Chaz Chandler, who said, "Oh, you've met Jimmy then?" So, good God, I thought, you know, you've blown it. You know, the very first, the great guitar biter is you know, you walk past him thinking he's the pervert from next door. Anyway, I'm going to find out. He comes in and he's dressed now and he's looking great and he's very friendly. He's a very friendly kind of guy. Now, Risk seems to have been the big game in London at that time. I'd never played it. I didn't know anything about it. It's a war game where you take over countries, which of course Putin is still trying to do. Maybe he'll learn to play the bloody game. Anyway, big spliffs rolled up, serious stuff, and we're playing Risk all night. So about 4 in the morning, I've had a great evening. I'm on Jimmy's team, so it's just Jimmy and me. You know, I'm thinking how I'm going to explain it to the band. Jimmy and me. so we're gonna see that boy playing that song that took everybody by surprise. Hey Joe.
I can do about it.
So it turned out the guy was called Philippe Basile, and he was a son of one of the leading members of the Luchets family from New Jersey, and you know, heavy dude. So the following morning, I'm just having breakfast. It turns out to be a kind of slightly loose day to actually get to have breakfast in the hotel. And the two people head towards me, my two new friends. And Philip said, well, you know, I might have overreacted a bit. I'm sorry, I was a bit wound up. But, and he slipped an envelope under my thing. He said, I'd like you to look after the band. I don't want them hanging out with any loose women or whatever. You know, I want you to take care of them. I said, oh, no. However, there's $3,000 in the package, and my wages were $150 a week, and so, you know, the shirt I thought was well paid for at the end of the day. The band didn't get up to any trouble at all. They were really quite simple. They travelled with us, and there was one situation where two girls, seemingly, that they were involved with had been running naked around the hotel covered in shaving foam. That seemed to be the extent of their excitement at being on tour. Anyway, very good. You have to remember that touring America, I was gradually getting the kind of hang of it, a bit of it. And Mitch Mitchell, you know, Mitch at this point had become a much better drummer than we saw earlier. He had kind of got it together quite a bit, but he's always been rather kind of cranky geezer, right? And for some reason he didn't like me ordering him, you know, onto planes or it's time to go or whatever. He didn't like that. So one night he decided to show me who's the kind of boss. He came in very late from a club, and he locked himself in his bedroom and moved the furniture against the door. Now we're getting up at 8:30. We have a flight to catch, and then there's another connection. So it's a very complex day. I couldn't get in. You know, I'm thumping the door, I can't get in. So I go and call the manager. I think, what do I do? Okay. I'll call the manager. I said, get him up to outside the room, and I said, look, I've got to get this guy out, and what I'm going to do then, and I took a fire axe. They have these fire axes and all. So I took the axe, and I swung it at the door, and I eventually knocked it down, about 10 wallops. So the door, and Mitch was kind of hiding behind the door with his thing and whatever. I'll get you fucking fired, you Paddy, you cunt, you wanna. So everybody liked that. Everybody, including Jimmy, thought that was pretty, because Mitch thought we're all three of us stars, and everybody else thought, well, the two boys are doing pretty good. Noel and Mitch are doing well, but Jimmy is kind of the star, at the end of the day. My band, the Heir Apparent, we went to a festival in Miami, and I got up on the swimming pool was on the roof, and at the end of the gig, and when I'd done the settlement, I'll come back to the settlement in a second, I got out. I thought I'll have a paddle and thing, because I can't swim. But my band were high on whatever, and they thought, let's push Rommel. Musicians are always trying to kill you. It's kind of very interesting. So they pushed me into the pool. Now, whatever they say about what happens when you're in this kind of circumstance, every swimming manual that I had looked at ever in my life swam before my eyes. I was trying to find out what you do. Noel Redding comes out on the roof at that time, and he's about 6 stone. He's a very thin guy, and he was tripping. He was miles away. He was up there with the fairies, and he looked in and he thought, oh Robbo's swimming down there in the pool. And after it seemed a few minutes, he thought, he's not really going very far. and he dived in. My band had run off, the Heir Apparent had run off, knowing that I would be pretty uptight. Noel Redding dragged me out, and they had to pump me out, the security from the hotel, whatever. Saved my life. This goes on. Bands are always trying to kill you. The other thing is, in America, various states have different allowances for girls' age. And so in Mississippi at that time, the acceptable age to be with a girl, she had to be 21. So I didn't know any of that. We play a gig, get to a hotel, it's kind of motel, it's spread out, and various people are with various people. I'm busy doing my accounts. I'm trying to keep up with the vast accounting that you have to do as a tour manager. So I'd taken 30 grand out of my briefcase. Now this briefcase, at the end of a night, 50% of the fee would have gone to the agent in New York, and you had to deal with the extra 50% and deal with the ticket. So if there was a percentage, you had to do the settlement of work out how much money you had to get. There was no credit cards then, and so at any one time I might have $500,000 in notes in my briefcase. I used to pay the hotels in cash. I had a list from management in New York of where to put the money every 5 days, 4 or 5 days. There'd be a bank in Atlanta or wherever we were touring, and I would put all the money into the bank. America is really funny. You know they're funny, but they're really funny. Whenever they see cash, they draw their guns. It's like the Wild West. Well, I used to go into these banks and I'd have to talk to them and say, yes, my name, blah, 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 this is so, and I'm making a deposit. And as soon as you open the briefcase, they draw their guns and you go, no. They're really, really bizarre. So the band are in the hotel. I'm counting my money. I've got maybe $400,000 or $500,000 in this case, and I take off 30 because I'm going to pay a few things. I'm going to pay the hotel and whatever, and push my briefcase under the bed. So the thunderous knocks on the door, thunderous, and I open it. It's the manager of the hotel and 3 obviously police detectives, you know, plainclothes. And the guy is saying, right, I know what's happening. You know the age group in blah, blah, Mississippi. There will be 20, I know they're here in a hotel. There's underage girls. This is going to be, 25 years in jail is the minimum, And I'm thinking, what the hell? But luckily, the manager of the hotel is winking at me from the back. So I'm paying attention to him, thinking, what's going on? And the guy is talking about arrangement. We'll have to make an arrangement. So I think, yeah, I understand this. It's the big sheds in Ireland. It's the money. So that was it. I had to pay 30 grand. He had 8 people surrounding the hotel. He got 6 or 8. Then the next guy got some. And the boys who were surrounding it got 2 each. So $30,000, it's a revelation to how it happens. Also, the promoters don't seem to be aware that Jimi Hendrix is black. They're always telling me racist comments about how they run good, clean shows. They don't allow any N-words in. And I'm thinking, I had to learn to shut up. I mean, it's difficult for me, but I had to, because there was no way I could alter. I thought John F. Kennedy had got everything sorted, really, before we got there. Anyway, Jimi Hendrix was a fantastic talent, but the schedule was so unpleasant. We were zigzagging, I remember having a trip from Harlingen in Texas up to Seattle, and there was no way, there was a flight, there was no direct flight. It was like getting a British train. You had to get about 4 or 5 kind of connections, which with that lot was very difficult, because you can imagine when we hit an airport, the bands went woof and disappeared. There was I didn't have security people, there wasn't any extra people. It was very, very difficult. Missing airplanes. We didn't miss a lot, but 1 or 2. Anyway, I wondered why that was. It seemed to me that you could go down the East Coast, maybe cut through Louisiana and come up the far way to Seattle, into Canada, because we were also going to Canada at the time. But no, we were zipping all over the time, and it was very, very difficult. I mean, there was a few very hairy situations. The other thing was that none of the groups seemed to understand the paperwork that they'd signed. Jimmy had signed paperwork when he was on the kind of Shetland circuit, when he was playing with Little Richard and various other bands in his early days, and he had signed several contracts that as soon as he was now famous, these people came up with the agreements that they had. So he wasn't really, at the end of the day, getting as much money as you would imagine, because there's about 5 or 6 people sucking off it. I found that to be terrible. A lot of contracts were signed in the dressing room in those days. So you'd have no legal help. So you have a situation where 5 minutes, guys, 5 minutes, you're on, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, you're on now. Just sign that before you go. A lot of contracts were signed, and in America, a signature was a chain. There was no way that you could get out of it. So I was thinking that, I could do it better, and I was learning the game. Jimmy at that point also decided he would make a record. He would be the producer for the Heir Apparent. And he told me that whatever happens, Dave, look, I know I'm not great at getting up, I'll get to bed late or whatever, but I would like to produce the band, and you can get me up if there's any problems. You can come in the bed, you can, it's cool. Get me out and get me to the studio. So the very first morning I'm going, Jimmy, 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 there's no sign of anything. So I opened the bedroom door. He's in a hired house up in Mulholland Drive, and it's totally mirrored. You're looking at a room that is made up of mirror everything. And in the middle is this big bed with black sheets, in the middle of which Jimi Hendrix is reposing. And on each side there's two Scandinavian twin blondes that he had, he loved blonde women and guitars. I think, he liked guitars and blonde women. I think he was always crazed about his guitars. So I get him out finally. I didn't have a camera, unfortunately, or I'll be showing you the picture now. And he made a great album with the Air Parent, and he played a lot of guitar on it and he played himself down to try and kind of fit in with these Northern Irish guys. They were good, but Jimmy was up in the stars. So I'm thinking that when I go back to London, I'm going to start a record label. It's something that I thought, I had experience of. I also found record labels in America. On the coast, they'd come out to see you in New York and LA, but you didn't see a lot of them the rest of the time. So I thought there was a way forward. There was a way that it could be slightly different. My partner that I then hooked up with, Jake Riviera, a very talented guy, very talented, very bright, very sharp, very on the case. But his favourite thing was to burn bridges, preferably when I was standing on them, and that made it very difficult. When we had a lot of arguments in those days. It seemed that I was into changing the live way things would kind of happen. And I spent a long time with Jimmy, and then I came back to London and started an independent record label. So I was managing, and I was, getting myself together, putting myself about. I had some really good stuff, and we signed several groups to Graham Parker and The Rumour, Nick Lowe, Dave Edmonds. We signed them to major record companies. Now I thought the major record companies knew what was happening. They were the experts in this kind of area, and so they'd be teaching me, and they'd be doing things for my bands that would really make the whole thing kind of jump up a gear or two. I was amazed to feel that they really didn't know what was happening. They expected the band to go out on the road. This band on the road situation was their entire marketing plan, and the band had to do kind of all the work, millions of interviews, radio interviews, non-stop. And it didn't seem to me that was, well, it didn't work for a start. A lot of the bands didn't get, they were really good, but they weren't getting anywhere. And so record companies are an interesting phenomenon. They're mainly American. All the majors kind of came from America. There was EMI and Decca here, but everybody else was pretty much a clone of an American record label. Now, the major record labels came about to be distributors and manufacturers. That's what they did. They had factories to make the record, and they combed through all the independent people in the States who had songs, and they would do license deals, and their factories and distribution systems would work exceptionally well. They figured, though, that the independents, whenever they got a bit of a hit, they'd go on holiday, which really pissed them off, because they're waiting for the next one. So they thought, we'll have our own record company, we have our own A&R department to fill in when the major stuff dries up or it isn't happening. Now, the A&R department is what runs the record company. That's the artists and repertoire. They are the people who sign the group. They go out and have scouts in their department. They go and see the band, and then they think, what material have they got that might make a hit, something that we can really focus on, or have we got material in our publishing company that this group could do? They're also known as the and ah department because they can't make decisions a lot of the time. So they are the essence of the record business that we kind of know. They had one huge slogan. It was a big slogan, and they all used it, and they all thought they were really being really fantastic. And that slogan, you know that slogan, what it is? It's called Out Now. I didn't think that was much of a slogan, you know. I thought there must be more. If I saw Out Now, it doesn't encourage me to sample the music of some unknown group because they're out now. So we came up, I think, with some better ones. We came up with We Came, We Saw, We Left, was good. Tomorrow's Sound Today, I mean, that was a good one, that one. Money Talks, People Mumble, excellent. I like this one. The second best answer is no. And of course, if it ain't stiff, it ain't worth the fuck. I mean, you can't do better than that. T-shirts in the later. Some of my personal favourites for Ian Jury was New Boots and Panties, which one of the big ones was Give Up Smoking and Give Us Your Money. And the best one of all was Don't Fart Before Your Arse is Ready. That caused a genuine spike. That caused a genuine spike in the sales. You could actually see that. That made it happen for about a week or 10 days. Here's a story. Inevitably, as you're an independent record company and you don't have companies, there's no stiff companies, for example, you make license deals with people in different countries. At one time, Stiff had 34 different licensees. And the essence of it was that they couldn't be licensees unless they copied the sales schedule of the home label. That was how we found, and they were big. There were some very big ones. We made a deal. Jake has now departed down the road with Elvis Costello. I gave him Elvis Costello. He was signed to me, but I worried that Jake, with his kind of bridge-burning attitude, might not make a living without me to look after him. So I spoke to Elvis, and we'll talk about Elvis later. At one stage, we did a deal in America with Arista, with Clive Davis. Now, Clive Davis...
I need to talk about Elvis now.
Do you? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well. Declan Aloysius Patrick McManus brought us in a tape out of the blue. It came to pass that he had been to every record label in town. In some cases, he had sat in the lobby for the day, but he got no interest in his songs. And he was a computer programmer. He was married. He had a child. He had to earn a living. Stiff loved the stuff, right? We loved it. And we recorded an album with him with a band called Clover. Clover, John McPhee, who's in the Doobie Brothers, the guitar player, Huey Lewis on harmonica, and various other people. The album didn't call for harmonica playing, so Huey is not represented on that record, but he was part of Clover. Great record, really good. We thought it was fantastic. Allison, Less Than Zero. There were some great tunes there, but we tried it out on a few journalists. We took it to a few radio people. They ignored it completely. We decided that Declan McManus might not be the ultimate name. So Elvis unfortunately had died a month or two earlier, and we got these Buddy Holly glasses for Declan because he had rimless and it made him look a bit like a computer programmer. So and his wife's maiden name was Costello, and we said, look, we're going to call you Elvis Costello. Now, normally, if somebody said to you, we're going to change your name to Elvis Costello, you're thinking of having a career in music, I think you'd have second thought. Declan did not hesitate at all. I was astonished. I had a big argument of why he should accept his name, but Jake and I said that's it, and he was happy. He went along with it. So we came up with the idea that he would play outside a big hotel in Park Lane where Sony, well, CBS as they were having a very big convention. And he would play there with his amp looking like the picture on the front of My Aim Is True. Because Barney Bubbles, the guy that we had doing the art for the label, was, phenomenal record labels. They were just great. All those little squares, if you ever look at it, it says Elvis is King. And they're all a tiny, remarkable. Elvis, I said to him before he went down there to Grosvenor House, whatever happens, and he was great, the new Elvis could really take a brief. Now that's unusual. There's not a lot of musicians who actually pay attention to what you're talking about a lot of the time. I said, whatever happens, do not stop playing. Keep playing, no matter what, police, whatever, you get any problems. So he's down there playing his tunes. A couple of the Yanks are looking at him and wondering, what the hell is that? And I make a call to West End Central. Now, I don't know if you hear it, well, probably you do, but I have an Irish accent. I had more of an Irish accent in those days, and I put it on a little bit, saying there's a guy outside Grosvenor House Hotel, I don't know what he's doing, he seems to be playing through this little box that he's got, and I don't know what he's doing. So, they rush down there. I have a friend at ITV News, and I try and sell him this idea, this guy playing outside the hotel, and the police are going to come and arrest him, and this is noteworthy and should be filmed. And he said, nah, it's not it's a busy news day today, Dave. That's not a big story. So Elvis gets taken back to West End Central. He's arrested. And they called me. We only had there was Jake, myself, and a young lady. We had 3 pieces of staff in the building. So I pick up the phone and they say, we've got a guy here who says he works for you called Elvis Costello. And I said, I've never heard of him. How unlikely is Elvis Costello? I get into a little conversation about it. So he's kept in overnight, right? The following day, he goes up in front of the magistrate, as you do if you're in the cells overnight for anything. And my news guy calls me early in the morning and said, it's a really quiet morning. I could do that filming. I said, let's get down there. So Elvis is now fined 20 quid for disturbing the peace, and we're on the news at 1 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, because the story, people liked the story, there was a good reaction about it. and we were on the 6 o'clock news as well. The record started to take off. There was an interest. Everyone was saying, has he got a record? Is there a record? Is there a record? And that's how My Aim Is True took off and Elvis's career started to shape up. And now we can see the video. Thank you very much. What a guy. Still with us to this day, still in touch, still working. What about the sweat there? I mean, stiff people gave you a lot of sweat, didn't they? So, going back to the original story, we are signed to Arista. Elvis is signed to CBS and gone off with Jake, CBS Sony. So Clive Davis is very well known, and he's a very bright guy. He's picked a lot of tunes. He's very knowledgeable, but he has a bit of an eye problem, right? You know that. And in Ireland they say he's got a bit of an eye problem, and you think, what do they mean? It's kind of, I did this, I did that. So he's on Stiff. He likes Stiff because it's giving him lots of cred. He likes the cred he's getting. And, because Stiff is an underground label, tough, happening. Ian Dury is on tour, and it's really working. With the Blockhead, it's really working, and Lena Lovitch is on tour also. So they're two records. Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, which had just been a big hit in England, and Lucky Number, Lena's song, are jumping the chart with a bullet, which means that it's going up 10 places every week. And it's a big thing to keep that bullet, because that keeps the momentum in America. In America, your chart at a time was radio ads. So as the radio stations are small, the medium, and then the large added to your record, you kept up the bullet, which was very important. Ian was touring with Lou Reed as well, and they hated each other. It was great. Ian was very good. He's just very competitive, you know, his disability, his personality. He liked to see a target that he could kind of get past. And he was doing very well with Lou Reed. I mean, Lou Reed made some very good comments, kind of, do I need fucking Ian Dury? Anyway, it's happening. And I'm getting a lot of great thing from the record company, Arista, saying it's all happening. I'm at a lot of meetings. The American record romance is happening. It's where they tell you you're the best in the, you know, they love it. They love you at that time. So Clive goes to do a thing called kind of Cut in the Act, which is a kind of a billboard item where an American executive goes to a show by an artist, and it's kind of Clive Davis attends the Bottom Line in New York with Ian Dury, who is number 70 with a bullet, blah blah blah, in the billboard. So this is a promotional item, and it turns up every week in Billboard. Clive comes down late on the third night of the show when Ian is in the Bottom Line, great club at the time, and he said, I've just come down to do the photograph, Dave. And I said, oh, great club. I've got my photographer here. Fine. I said, but we don't go in the dressing room with Ian and the blockheads until about 20 minutes. Because Ian is crippled, and it takes him a while, and he sweats a lot, and he puts everything, you know, he leaves everything on the stage, so it's kind of difficult. Also, the blockheads have been known to punch each other out in the dressing room because the gig didn't go the way they had planned it. So we, you know, 20 minutes, you know, fine. He said, no, I've got to go somewhere else. I do this all the time, Dave. He said, you know, it's no sweat. It's, you know, I'll do it. I've got to go down the street. And so I'm barring him, but at a certain point, because he's really hassling me, I think, okay, go in there. Now, Ian Dury has a guy called Cosmo Vinyl. And Cosmo is one of the mouthiest people around, and he is he's Ian's public mouth, right? He went on to do the same for the Clash. He's very together. So he's fascinated by Clive. I don't know why, but Clive's clothes. Clive is a blazer, cavalry twill kind of cravat dresser. But Cosmo is fascinated by it. So when Clive goes into the dressing room, Cosmo kind of dives down his jacket to see the label. So he kind of pulls Clive and sees the label. Clive hates to be touched. Hates it. And if you ever see that photograph, I don't have it now, but he's looking pretty strangulated when you see it. In Clive Davis meets Ian Dury at the Bottom Line. The following day I get a call from Arista, a gentleman called Elliot Goldman, who is Clive's business affairs and kind of hatchet man. And I thought it was to do with some business attitude. So I go in and Elliot said, we're pulling all the promotion off your acts. And I thought it was kind of a joke, you know, really. Yeah, pulling. Yeah, great. Well, they're roaring up the chart, and we're now going to pull the thing. He said, yeah. He said, Clive was assaulted by your staff last night. And I'm saying, look, Elliot, they're not my staff, and I warned Clive about it. He's a grown-up. If he wants to go in and take his chances, I mean, that's not my thing. He said, yeah, well, that's all well and good, Dave, except that's not how we see it, and this is how the American business works. We're going to fuck you now, and if you survive, you might get to fuck us later. I was amazed. What is this man talking about? So it turned out that we had to give Arista $900,000 because of all the money they spent in promotion and various other things, and a bit of it in advance. And luckily, Bruce Lumble, a guy who was running Sony, who had been the other underbidder. We'd been a hot property, so there'd been two people bidding, and one had been Sony, and I thought Clive, because of Clive's kind of personal running of the record label, that might be the place to go. And I had, now wrong. Bruce Lumble, a real gentleman, coughed up $900,000 so we could go. I mean, when I say he coughed it up, that was part of our debt. We were now moving to a different label, but with not. Cosmo still owes me $900,000. And I've attempted on several occasions to get it. And he seems to think it wasn't him at all. He married a very nice young lady who also was, father was a big corporate thing. And Cosmo runs quite a nice little item still in New York. However, what we're going to do is we're going to see Ian Duras hit me with a rhythm stick and remind ourselves what a cracker this was.
In the deserts of Sudan and the gardens of Japan, from Milan to Yucatan, every woman's every man. Hit me with your rhythm stick, hit me. In the wilds of Borneo and the vineyards of Bordeaux, Eskimo, Arapaho, move their body to and fro. Hit me with your rhythm stick, hit me, das ist gut, say, fantastic. Hit me, hit me, hit me, hit me with your rhythm stick. It's nice to be a lunatic. Hit me, hit me, hit me. Hit me, hit me, hit.
We'll now take a short break.
The merchandise after the show is in cash only, just in case. I'm going to make the announcement now. There is a cash point nearby if you want to use this time wisely.
Are you trying to sell us something?
Get another pint, that's the main thing.
You sound like your dad.
Okay. All right then. So we're getting back into some of the stiff stuff. Is Jonah Louis here?
There he is.
Here he is. So, we found a very good thing to get involved in were the videos. Stiff was early with the videos. MTV was just starting, and I could see that videos might be useful. We used to make them pretty much just to send to licensees, so they would. I've just been thinking of Jonah. Sorry, Jonah. So that they would see the new record and the new artist. But MTV came along and it really changed everybody's mind. Stiff was particularly good because the staff would all be in the video. They would all do the things. It was a very collective kind of company. And very grateful to all those people who've gone on to greater things. Some people, would call me and say, what did you feed your staff on? They're they're really exciting. They work. They have ideas. Anyway, we had a sense of humor. I mean, I took an ad for somebody that said, stock now while EMI lasts. And I got a legal letter from the chairman of EMI. No sense of humour at all. And promotion is the name of the game. I mean, you're trying to, everybody makes some great music, but attracting people to it, and word of mouth is what makes it. So you've got to get people kind of excited about it. You know, word of mouth will work very well with just your mother, but you need to have a bigger kind of... Jonah Louis, he came to us, Charlie Gillette, a very good man. I mean, great DJ, attitude, music lover, and a picker of songs. He had a great eye, and he said, this Jonah Louis guy might be something to consider. And Jonah was good man, good friend, but he had this, punctuality was not his forte. I mean, it could be 3 hours late for the meeting, you know. Also, he would talk to people at bus stops, usually old ladies, and he had a big diary, had a big book, and he would write down what they said. He kind of hummed a tune to them, and then write down what they thought. And that would then take part in our meeting. My wife could have killed him fairly regularly, because I never got to my dinner or my evening meal, because Jonah, a meeting that was supposed to take place at 3 would take place at 6:30. So he was great though, and promotion, he understood the concept. France had a lot of variety shows, and they were all run by, you know, attractive middle-aged kind of ladies, French ladies. Jonah was great at chatting them up. And that paid a lot of dividends, because they'd have him back, you know, fairly swiftly. It meant, though, that his hotel bill was a bit large in the Champagne area or thereabouts. So I got a call from Vogue, who are the licensee in France, and the guy said, Jonah is a great promotion guy. He said, but I can't understand the size of the bills, because he seems to be taking a lot of dry cleaning and laundry seems to be put on the bill. But he loved Jonah's attitude, and in Italy, Jonah was pushing Stop the Cavalry, which was, I think it was in March. They weren't aware it was a Christmas record. You know, I often wondered what they listened to in the lyric department. But Jonah always said this wasn't a Christmas record, it was an anti-war song. And you can see from this video we're just about to see what it was all about.
Churchill comes over here to say we're doing splendidly, but it's very cold out here in the snow, marching to and from the enemy. Oh, I say it's tough, I have had enough, can you stop the cavalry?
We had an Italian licensee at RCA called Carlo Basili, who still sends me videos of very well endowed young ladies. I have no idea why. I think our international department, a gentleman called Alan Cowdroy, sent a message to RCA saying, Jonah needs a rifle to do the one-man show, so he can walk around with the rifle, and he needs that. Now Carlo had a new promotion man, so he said, get a rifle for Jonah, he's coming on the flight, he needs it for promotion. And his new man Bruno got a real rifle and went to the airport with it. he was pounced on. I think it's about 3 days before they got him back. Anyway, John who complained at the time said they weren't there with my bloody rifle. You know. Anyway, it's another hardship which I've spoken about regularly is the artist thinks that killing you might be really exciting. The Damned were a great example. They did a show in Copenhagen and the audience was about 400 Hells Angels, and they were having a great time for about 4 numbers until Rat Scabies had an argument with Captain Sensible and kicked over his drums and a bass player, and they were throwing punches at each other. Music stopped and they rushed out the back then. They rushed, having kicked all the gear all over the place, they rushed out the back, and I'm there. I just come just to see the tour. I was in Europe and there was a couple of other tours on, and I just called on their day. So I'm trying to get them into their van, and you know, I'm getting them in. They locked the door because they saw behind me all these Hells Angels are really uptight because they'd come for a long gig, and obviously they got 4 numbers. And they were just cackling with laughter and pointing while I'm trying to, you know, talk them down. I think I just bored them. You know, no, the gear doesn't work. No. Anyway, it happens all the time. But The Damned, the very first punk single, very first punk album on Stiff. So we see some of that.
Is she really going out with him?
Charlie came up also with Lena Lovitch. He came up with the idea that Lena might be something. And he'd recorded a song with her called I Think We're Alone Now. And it was good. And we thought we'll put it out. But she wrote a song called Lucky Number. And I could see that was by far the strong number. So, unusual. She was very unusual. Lucky Number, we remixed a bit. And so at the very end, there's an awful lot of, about 8 people from the Stiff office are singing number 2 at the very end, right? And it went to number 2, and I had no idea why I didn't say number 1. You know? so also there's a big, where the engineer made a mistake with the harmonizer or one of those kind of things, where he fed the information through the wrong way, and it nearly blew the cones out of the speakers. But it was a big clap like that, which went on. So it was sampled into quite a lot of dance stuff from Detroit. So they've been very good, Lena Lovitch. We're gonna watch something that a live video is called Say When, which we may or may not have exposed before, and I think it's really hot, this one. Say When.
Who edited the video?
Huh?
Who edited the video?
Oh, excuse me. My wife Rosemary. Thank God I've got sons. videos were all made in one day. They were all made in one day because that was as much time as we could give to them. But it meant that we were very focused on making the video and doing as much shots to make it work as possible. Great example now, Temple Tudor, who were, you know, I think Eddie Temple really should have gone on to greater things. You know, not that he held, you know, there was more that he needed to have more chances to do what he did because he's quite incredible. Also, they're notorious because this video cost a fortune because they sank the Viking boat. Wonderbar! From Austin in Texas, we acquired a gentleman called Joe King Carrasco. And he was, you know, I mean, he's still rocking, huh? Joe is still doing it. He's still, he called me from Cambodia recently and said, I'm down there in Cambodia, Dave, it's really happening, and we're really rocking, blah, 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 the tour. Oh, they remembered the tour. We shot this video, and we had a great shot. Bueno was his big song. We had a great thing where he was running down the mall with his crown on and his cape, right? And it's really good. But it seemed there was something on in the mall that we didn't know, some royal bat. Two policemen galloped out of the crowd and each one grabbed a shoulder and carried him away off the mall, right? And I turned to the camera guy, I said, oh God, that's fantastic. Wasn't that really good? And he said, I wasn't turning over. So we didn't use him again, unfortunately. But another fallback position was an open top bus. So you could go around and you could capture all the all the features of London. There's a great bit here where he loses his footing and nearly doesn't have in. Hey, buena, joking grass.
So darling, won't you love me the way that I love you? Please don't ever leave me. Please don't leave me blue. 'Cause Wayne all the time. Wayne on my mind. Wayne all the time. Wayne on my mind.
So I managed Jean Dury for a few years before we signed him to Stiff. It involved mainly Ian affixing himself to my wallet by and large, but he was so great, and he was writing great lyrics. But you know, he hadn't really connected with anything at that time. He lived in a place called Catshit Mansions, which which overlooked the oval cricket ground, and I found a minder. I was always kind of conscious of trying to find somebody to mind Ian, because you know, he'd fall down, he had real trouble getting up. It was, you know, polio had really kind of changed his life. But it shows you the determination of that guy. Very unusual, perfect for Stiff. He, at one point, I encouraged Black Hill, who were a management company and publishing company, to sign him up, because he needed somebody really steady that would do things for him, because he was quite bossy generally. In return, Black Hill, I kind of passed my management of him over, and Black Hill gave me an office and a telephone for a year. That was the deal, which is how we started Stiff. In actual fact, we actually had the premises and the telephone. So it was very good. There was a guy called Spider Rowe that I found in Catshit Mansions, who was looking for a job, and he was a very burly individual, quite difficult to talk to, because he said to me, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm up to see Ian, you know, who's upstairs." "Oh," he said, "the Raspberry." And I thought, raspberry, I don't know how that goes. So then he said, "Yeah, the Raspberry Ripple, right?" I said, "Oh yeah, Ian, I know who you mean." So he became Ian's minder, and Fred Rowe, he's 88 now, he's still going, he's still doing his thing, and he was a great help. He was a great builder of Ian's confidence and things. Black Hill did a very good job with him, but they thought, when they made this record, New Boots and Panties, they did some of the production, and Chaz Jankel was the ingredient. He was the one with the light funk kind of music, and he and Ian's lyrics became the item, really. And Peter Jenner, who, you know, was well connected in Black Hill, and he said to me, I was listening, Ian kept feeding me the demos, and I was thinking, oh, these are really good. So Peter Jenner said, "Look, Dave, I'm really sorry, but we're going to be signing to a bigger company." And I said, "Oh, no, all right, Peter." I knew that no major company would sign Ian Dury. I knew if they ever met him, they wouldn't, because he would have demanded something really kind of large. And I knew that music was going to come to Stiff, which it did eventually. We did this. His minder had done 12 years for robbery with violence. Ian liked a bit of gangsterism in his kind of attitude. And Fred, who was called Spider, because he used to go up the outside of buildings and to get his robbery team in, he was the Spider-Man. He would go up the side. He was great. He was lovely. So you have the kind of conversation with your artist, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's a call, and she's beating the shit out of me, Dave. I said, "What are you talking about, Ian?" "She's got me, Dave. I'm on the floor. She's nicked me calipers, and she's done a runner." So I said, "I hope you're writing a song about this, Ian." This became the Rudette song. She was great, Denise Rudette. I loved her. And she goes on to be part of, you know, Stiff history. He was 34 years old, significantly crippled by polio. He couldn't really sing. He knew that, you know, singing, he could not hold a tune. But he had this kind of talking kind of tune, and he got better. The remarkable thing about bands is the more they play, the more they go out, the more live they are, the better they are. And personally, for me, I like live music. I mean, I never decided to get into this game to hear, 25 people from Scandinavia do the bloody lyric, or computer programmers decide how the rhythm goes. I much prefer to hear the acoustic music. And what can we say? 10 years of Stiff, 1976 to 86. We signed Nick Lowe, The Damned, Reckless Eric, Lemmy of Motorhead fame, Elvis Costello Madness, Tracy Ullman, Ian Dury and the Blockheads, The Untouchables, Jonah Louie, Kirsty MacColl, Lena Lovitch, Mickey Jupp, The Pogues, Joe King Carrasco, Tempo Tudor, Alvin Stardust. Now, he was great. I really enjoyed him. He's a lovely man and was a great propagator of the label. He went out of his way to give us attitude and PR. So, they needed to be promoted. How do you get new bands, new music, new songwriters to the forefront? Major record companies aren't going to give you anything. They give you a bit of money to sign you or to keep you away from Warner Brothers or whatever their attitude is. They spend the rest of the time trying to thieve it back from you. So, okay, that was, the world's most flexible record label. Great motto. And I had heard that undertakers, in dealing with people, we were called undertakers to the business, to the industry, and I found that undertakers would sign their letters with "yours eventually." So a lot of stiff letters that went out to corporate people had that expression at the end. Anyway, life is a lot of fun. At the end of the day, there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of focus that needs to be done. But getting people to pay attention to the music, you have to be a bit up front. You have to kind of pull it together. The Pogues. I'd heard a lot about them. Pogue Mahone means kiss my arse, right? So you're not going to get very far at Radio 1 with that kind of name. I went to see them in the King's Cross, and they did 3 numbers and fell into the audience. And then I thought only the drummer was left. He wasn't that great a drummer, but he was left playing. And I went into the public bar, and they're all there having a pint. I thought, these are my people. I need to have them. So, the first album did about 16,000 with a lot of effort. They didn't have a natural kind of connection to the public because they seemed to be pissed all the time and lying on the floor. It was quite difficult to find the connection that was required. The French, on the other hand, who like a genuine alcoholic, right? they loved them. So we would send them to France to do promotion, and the record company would take them to a bar first thing. You know what I mean? In they went, had a lot of drink to have, and then would ignore the miming or whatever they had to do on the TV station. The French loved them. Genuine alcoholics they loved, right? Elvis Costello then decided that he really was in love with the bass player, Kath, lovely girl. And the band didn't like that. They weren't fans. Shane was not a fan of Elvis Costello. He thought, it was some kind of sellout or whatever. But Elvis was good at it, and he made a great record. Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash, which is Churchill's description of the English Navy. So they're making this record. It's very, very good. I really thought they'd really finally got their act together. And so we have a very big party on HMS Belfast in the River Thames. My wife, who's a very talented person, devised a cocktail for this affair, which involved some champagne, there was the bourbon, there were a couple of other things, and there was kind of a brown sugar cube was very much a part. We called it the truth drug because we tried it out a bit. You had 2 of these and you started telling the next door person, whoever it was, the entire risque parts of your life. It was a fascinating thing. I had to stay away from it, you know, because there's no way I would tell my missus some of the stuff that came out. Great party, a great on the boat, on the cruiser there in the channel. But then the band thought it was very funny for throwing 4 or 5 journalists over the side. I mean, luckily those people could swim. A tide in the Thames is about 9 or 10 knots. And let me tell you, that's a whisk. The water, you're there 1 minute and you're God knows where you are the next, you know. So then, of course, then the old adage comes in, you know, what are we doing? We're not very excited. Where's Robbo? Let's throw Robbo in. Now, I can't swim, but I knew that my arguments would not go anywhere with that band, you know. I had to lock myself in the bloody loo for 3 hours until they were all kind of taken away. It's what people do to their independent record label. They wouldn't do that to some chairman of bloody Sony, but you open the door and you have a bit. The Dubliners also gave the Pogues a kind of, they're the real royalty of folk in Dublin. And they did the Irish Rover with them. And that meant that the Irish got on the case with the Pogues. You know, prior to that, the Irish thought they were too pissed even to be Irish. Do you know what I mean? I went recently, a couple of years ago, to Shane's 60th birthday. Now think about that, Shane McGowan's 60th birthday. I mean, that boy has been in, you know, he's been knocked up by more buses, by more stepping off the pavement, to more, he's had more bones broken than, you know, an English jockey. You know, he's kind of, his pelvis is in a terrible state. But his liver, he tells me, is in pure, I asked him whether he would commit his body to scientific kind of investigation when he passes, you know. I said, you should sign yourself up for it. So he had a birthday party, and he had over 1,000 people at 75 quid a pop at the bloody thing. And there was a very good band, Irish kind of, Sharon Shannon, various players. Terry Edwards, who's a great arranger, sax player. Well, he plays everything. He did the work, and Shane just kind of in his wheelchair wheeled around waving a bottle of white wine for most of the party. The Irish president, a guy called Michael O'Higgins, nice man, used to be the cultural minister in Ireland, gave Shane the Lifetime Award, which is obviously shaped like a harp, and the crowd went mad, you know. They'd all pay their 75 quid, and they were still on the case. Afterwards, I was needing a pee at the time, and I'm in the loo at this very, very nice college hall in Dublin, and the big guy banged me on the shoulder. I looked up, a very big guy, and he said, "Are you going to be, you know, you're finished?" I said, sorry. He said, "The president wants to get in." So I said, "No, well, I'm not finished at the moment." And luckily, the next door person, you know, vacated. So me and Michael O'Higgins are looking at each other as we're pointing at the porcelain there, and we didn't shake hands immediately afterwards. So we're going to look at, you know, Shane McGowan. MCA wanted the band for America, and it was good to take. But they couldn't, in California, they could not understand that anyone would have those teeth, right? So they painted them in. So the promotional thing, you know, the Californians just couldn't believe that anybody. And we had to, the band insisted that we make them withdraw the extra ingredient. We're going to look at Dirty Old Town, written by Ewan MacColl, Kirsty MacColl's father.
I met my love by the gasworks wall. Dream the dream by the old canal. I kiss my girl by the factory wall. Cats are prowling on their beat. Springs a girl from the streets at night. Dirty old town, dirty old town.
So, Madness is one of the groups that has really given me a lot of joy, really. National treasures. And my wife Rosemary and I were getting married. We needed a band, and several people had told me that this group were really influenced by Ian Dury, really kind of wild, rude boys, kind of interesting. And we should have a look. I need to look at you need to look at the group. You're never going to sign anything without actually looking at it. And so the two situations were perfect, and they agreed to do the wedding, which amazed me. My wife was thrilled, needless for me to say, when I told her we were going to have this group that I was going to look at. And they did this instrumental One Step Beyond. I had never seen them before, and I thought, God, that's good. That's a hit record. And a great album title. So, and my wife is nudging me saying, what are you doing? Are you just thinking yet again about bloody bands? You know, you're supposed to pay attention to me on our wedding day. So, also, Reckless Eric had groped some girl at the bar, and there was a bit of a to-do there. I had to go and try and sort that out, because the boyfriend tried to kill him, so I was... Anyway, Suggs has said in an interview that Dave bored us to death about this bloody One Step Beyond. We didn't want to do it, but it's just as well he did. So that's a good observation, isn't it, really? When we recorded the album, the first One Step Beyond album, the band refused to do the recording of the single. Well, I thought my idea, the single, their idea, we're not doing it. And it took an awful lot of kind of boring persuasion, about 5 hours of thing, because they just didn't want it. And eventually they did a 1 minute 25-second version of it, but they hadn't really come across the ability of engineers to extend stuff and to do a lot of editing. So we did it, and luckily it all turned out very well. A gentleman in the band, there's a story about, I had a great relationship with the group. Once they decided that record, which they hadn't visualized as a single, was actually going to do well, they thought, well, he knows something we don't, so we let him run with the single. So it was a great relationship, and we had a very good time. Then suddenly out of the blue, my relationship with the band seemed to be suffering a bit. You know, they weren't actually meeting my eyes, and we weren't having the kind of chats together that we had. So it turned out that a member, who might actually be here, of Madness,
Who could that be?
he'd gone to our warehouse and said, Robbo says you're to give me X number of records, which they did. And then he went to the group and said, well, can you sign these? Robbo needs these signed. And then they were being sold in Camden Market. So the band thought I was in some way involved in this little situation. But, you know, aside from that, Lee, who's always wanted to do the unusual, in this video, Baggy Trousers, he wants to fly without really the group really knowing he's going to fly. So we found somebody who could do this harness thing, and he was really crazed about the idea of flying. So it's a genuine reaction by the group to this mad bugger, madness. Baggy Trousers.
Same old invented plane, same old backsides again. All that's more one felt and tales. Walking home, it's what's in stuff. Oh, what fun we had. Back then it really turned out bad. All I learned at school was houses and unbreakable. Oh, what fun we had. And at that time it seems like that. Enjoying the front ways. Too much to look through the days. Lots of boys, lots of smells and lots of noise. Playing football in the park, kicking push bikes off the dark. Baggy trousers, dirty shirt, pulling hair and eating dirt. Teacher comes to break it up, back of the end of a plastic cup. Oh, what fun we had, back then it really turned out bad. All I learned at school was houses and not break the rule. Oh, what fun we had, but at that time it seems so bad. Trying different ways to make the difference through the days.
Still a worker, that one.
Can you do that now, though? There is not a wire thick enough. But I tell you, can you remember the fella with Jeff Baines directed that, didn't he? A good Calabash. But I'll be brief, mate. When
Give that man a microphone.
they put that harness on us, it was nuts and bolts and leather. Now it's just Velcro and very lightweight. But when they put that harness on us, Dave, I don't know if I remember to tell you, but they put it on, strapped it up, it took about 20 minutes. And as I was lifted, there was a ping. And it brought a tear to my third eye. I thought, fuck this, I don't want to go through this procedure again. So I was raised, I went through all that shit you just see. When they lowered us down, I've looked, and my wife was a bit concerned. My nuts are blown up. I said, take away the bruising, but leave the swelling.
I don't know if people remember seeing Lee at the Olympics, you know, the Olympics opening, and he's flying in the sky, but hanging off his kilt down below is a collection of jewellery, right? The crown jewels is hanging down beneath his kilt. Oh, what a great moment. The very first Top of the Pops that Lee took part in, he had this kind of back somersault idea, and so, you know, they're going running through the actual track, And of course, nobody knew that he was going to do this kind of back somersault. So, so they shot it, you know, they rehearsed it. And Lee said to me, he said, they didn't catch the thing, you know. I said, Lee, for fuck's sake, if you're going to do that, you have to tell somebody. It's not fucking magic. You can't just do it and catch it. And as luck would have it, they decided they weren't going to cover it or whatever. But that's a man who has, a man who's been part of my my ongoing life, always doing the unexpected. Give a hand to that man. An interesting story about Madness signing to Stiff is that they had a lawyer called Paul Wolfe, and Paul Wolfe got very excited because Seymour Stein was going to have America. The band decided they were going to have one label for America and one label for the rest of the world. So Stiff was going to have the rest of the world, and Seymour would get the benefit of it later. So Paul Wolfe, we are deciding to have a meeting to try and get it. We wanted to get on with the recording. We wanted to get some releases, including the band. They wanted to get on. So their lawyer is realizing that there's a lot of other labels that are fancy having this band, particularly as they hear Stiff is interested in signing them. These other labels keep calling. During the meeting, we get a call from Richard Branson, you know, his usual bullshit. I'll give you twice as much as Dave is offering. I mean, you know, he'd never come up with that, but it's a good quote. And we're all having a good laugh. Everybody is, you know, we're in the big meeting in the room, in the lawyer's room. And eventually, there's a geezer. I can't remember his name. Do you remember that band, Beaky, Mickey, Nitch and Titch? What are they?
Beaky, Mickey, and Titch.
Dave D. Thank you. So Dave D. So eventually, it's getting difficult for the band to focus, and it looks like the lawyer is going to get away with the idea that it'll be later. Because he realized he can get more money for this negotiation. It's not just an hourly thing. He could actually get a bit of a slice of the business if he could give it to a major record company. And I said, well, everybody's phoned. Dave D from Warner Brothers is going to phone now. The last call, because he's always the last. He's always late. So when he phones, we can get down to business, because he'll be the last one bothering to try and whatever. And the phone rang, it's Dave D. Now the band are a bit impressed with that. They think, hang on, Dave knows something, and that's good. So they're now settling down to, let's get this deal done. So Paul Wolfe then says, we're not going to be able to do this today anyway, because it's my wife's, our anniversary, and we're going to the opera, right? And so, you know, I've got to leave at 6 because we're, you know, it's a big evening at the opera. So I think, oh fuck, you know, this isn't going to happen. And if it slips forward, who knows what could happen? You never know what's going to go on. So my secretary, a very capable lady called Annie Pitts, I called her up and I said, Annie, get a limo, and find out where Paul Wolfe's wife lives, right? Get out there with a limo and a big bunch of flowers and some champagne, right? And get out there. Paul is still talking in the room. Get out there and say, Paul has decided, you know, there's going to be wonderful. He needs a suit, his kind of black tie suit, and happy anniversary, and here is it, blah, 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 blah. Fantastic. So that's what happens. So she loves the idea, gets in the car, I hear her on the phone, and so I can go back in, and Paul says, well, we have to stop now because I've got to go home and pick up my wife. I said, don't worry, Paul, your wife thinks you're marvellous, and she's on her way here, and she's got your tuxedo, and it's all fucking wonderful. So do you want to lose a record deal or plead your bloody wife? You know, let's get on with it. And we managed to do it. We managed to get it finished. It was great. It was one of the yeah, it was key at the time. Just to do it, and Madness also were into that kind of style of thing. They wanted action. They wanted to make records. They didn't want to kind of fiddle around with the bullshit of of Paul Wolf. He's still around, Paul. Anyway, one day the door opened and a gentleman prostrated himself on the office of Stiff. It turned out to be Reckless Eric from Hull, who was pissed as a rabbit. He'd had about 3 flagons of cider to build up his confidence, and of course when he got to the door there's a step and he hit it. So he ran off. We were all laughing, the office was laughing, and Nick Lowe was there and had the foresight to put a cassette that had fallen out of Eric's pocket into the cassette machine and played The Whole Wide World. And, you know, I had to run down the road to get a grip on him. Whole Wide World. Woo! Drummer and bass player, Ian Dury and Denise Rodette. Reckless always said I ruined his career. And I always said to him, what career are we talking about? Anyway, Kirsty. I mean, what can I say about Kirsty McCall? She was a great girl, great songwriter, a great producer. And yes, and you know, it was a great shame saving her kids from what would have been a terrible thing. She ended up getting killed. It's a terrible thing. She wrote some of the great songs, and she was good at everything. We had her on the label, and then Polydor offered her some really silly money. And she asked me what to do, and I said, take it. I loved Polydor spending money on our artists, really. So she was a bit stage struck. She didn't feel confident. She was a very unconfident girl, and although she wrote the great songs, it was difficult for her to get up on the stage. So we've got a bit of Polydor's track that she did for them, which was a bit of a hit. There's a guy who works down the chip shop, swears he's Elvis, he's a liar, and I'm not sure about you. Co-written by Phil Rambo. Let's go.
You missed it, Dave.
Huh?
You messed up the order.
Have I?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do now?
This is the Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll Stiff tour, the train tour, the package tour.
All right, package tours. We're good at package tours. And here's another one. So this is the first Stiff tour, which came from all my experience in Stiff. I love package tours. I love them to make them work, to make them seamless, to make them exciting. I have a lot of people over the years who've come and said, you know, I met my girlfriend, blah, blah, whatever, at the package tour. So we're going to see a bit of sex and drugs and rock and roll, right? Yeah. Right?
Sex and drugs and rock and roll is all my brain and body need. Sex and drugs and rock and roll is very good.
Stand by my rights. All right? Go on, do it. Kirsty, are you going to show it?
Yeah.
Go on. So she'd written several songs which didn't connect for her. I don't know what the reason was, but Tracy had this TV kind of persona that people liked. My wife met her in the hairdressers and heard her say, "I'd love to make a record." So she gave him the record company thing, the number, and we did great. She was great fun, Tracy. She was a very witty person. We managed to get something for her at MTV where she became a VJ for 3 months, and the Yanks just loved her. They loved that kind of English kind of slapstick that she was involved in, and she got all the big shows. Kind of Johnny Carson, all those big international American shows. So Fox News, Fox Records, they decided to give her an hour TV show. They liked her so much. She had a hit on MTV, and they tested it. Yanks test everything. I think it's probably a good thing sometimes. They tested her and found that the young public, could get interested in her for 45 minutes, but they wanted an hour show. And so they decided, they had this kind of cartoon lying around, and decided that maybe a cartoon would help her get a full hour together. Her husband, very bright geezer, suggested that if they're going to have a cartoon in there, they wanted a piece of it. So Kirsty and her husband ended up with 25% of The Simpsons. So the rest is kind of history. Here's a Kirsty song of Tracy singing Breakaway.
Can you tell the story about the song, Dave?
Are we going to tell it now, or should we tell it later? Who's running the show?
I'll never work with glasses ever again.
Go.
They're on the skunk.
I
Anyway, Tracy was, she went to a stage school and she'd got a lot of, she could really hold a tune, but she had a kind of a stage persona, you know, it's like a musical kind of persona that I thought her voice was great, but it needed a little bit of a speed up, a little bit of a very speed. I'd heard of the Ronettes and Phil Spector had been speeded up a little bit to make them make the sound he wanted. So I speeded it up a bit, right? She called me and said, "You've made me one notch short of a chipmunk." She's a very funny girl. So 2 albums she put out for us, and they both were big successes, mainly in Europe and a bit in America. But she did a great, she was good at it and she really worked hard. The last album she got a lawyer to say that I could not speed up her voice in any way. And so we only had a 3-album deal with her. You know, Richard Branson offered her double whatever Dave's offering, you know, usual Branson bullshit. And so the last album was natural speed, everything really marvelous. Didn't sell anything. I mean, you know, what can you say in the heat of the moment? So then, Frank O'Sullivan?
No, it's to the end now.
Okay, all right. The thing that I always preached, and you know, to be a smart aleck, you have to keep going. I preached that I tell everybody who came to the label that the first thing to remember is that the sale of large amounts of records does not increase your IQ. So, you know, if that worked, it was great. It's been great having you. It's been marvellous. We're going to have question and answers now. I mean, that's always been a great interest. But I tell one joke at the end here, which is, what's the difference between Bono and God? And the answer is that God doesn't go around Dublin thinking he's Bono. It must be love.
Hello. I'm here to warn you. In the video you're about to see, it is an extremely dangerous stunt, which I'd like none of you at home to try and practice.
I never thought I'd miss you half as much as I do. And I never thought I'd feel this way, the way I feel about you. Love, love, it must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love.
That gentleman at the end of the string section, smiling, that's Labby Sifri, who wrote the tune, right? And he should smile.
They did write that one, didn't they?
Madness made that one for him. The interesting story about this track is I heard it on a video, when we were shooting a video, one of the early videos. I heard this tune, and later on the band did it as a kind of a sound check. So I said, "Oh God, that's great, that's a big hit single." And they said, "We're not doing it, it's a cover." So I said, no, you're not understanding. It'll be a huge record. It's really incredible, blah, blah, blah. And they said, no. So I made a deal with them that I would give them the whole record company.
Yes.
and work for them for 3 years at my current salary if the record wasn't a hit. And we decided to define.
If it ain't a number one,
we said a hit, and we defined a hit as top 5. So luckily the record went to number 4. Hey! And
hands up questions.
Hello, Dave. Thanks very much. Really amazed to be here and hear all about your stories. But one thing I'd love to hear, as a child, how did you get exposed to music? Was it your parents? But what was the experience as a youngster, 5, 6, 7 years old and growing?
I had a cousin who had a fun fair in Ireland. They call it a carnival in Ireland, so the fun fair. And for when I was 9 to 12, it was a great pleasure for me to be allowed to go out to the carnival, to the fun fair, the dudgeons and all that kind of stuff. And of course I was given the job of playing the music, which were all on 78. So every 3 minutes you had to change the 78. And my experience at that time was Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, a couple of other kind of Louisiana kind of sounds, Elvis, obviously, Presley. And so I got really fascinated about the musical kind of beginning, and that was always hung out with me. My father, of course, hated it. He was an Irish amateur ballroom champion. That's how he met my mother. And he thought that was real noise, nasty, whatever. And that, of course, is what cements you to a sound. So that was my beginning. And then the show bands had a big effect because they were playing an awful lot of varied music. And I realized that, you know, who produced this music? Where did it come from? Who wrote it? And so I knifed in on the songwriters, and that became my kind of motive, really.
Next questions? Yeah. Pass this through to you, yeah.
Hi Dave, it's been a magic evening. I think it's been so great. All your promotional stuff at Stiff was so full of novelty and seemed so exciting and new. Did you get that from anyone, or were you inspired by any other record labels or any other promotional people, or was that completely clean slate?
It was part of wanting to have a management company, and as we covered a little bit of, tied it to major record companies when you thought that they knew something that you didn't, and in going to them, aside from a bit of advance money, which is nice, you thought that they knew something, and I realized that they didn't. I also thought, what's the alternative? How do you attract people? How do you attract the public? You know, the record business has always been the public's taste. Who was the gentleman who was the director of The Shining? What was his name?
Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley, thank you very much. This man could be on the show. Stanley Kubrick said, I love quotes by people. I love Irish proverbs, I love quotes, I love things that tell you something that is interesting. He said, the judgment of a work of art the judgment of a work of art is whether you like it or not. It is not your ability to describe why it is good. And I thought, you know, that was a thing that has always kind of measured certain things that I thought we could do, is, do you like it? Is there some humor? I like the humor. I think the humor lasts more than a lot of other things. And also, the record business as part of it, record songs, music. I mean, Alzheimer's, people who have Alzheimer's and can't remember their granny, you play the song and they remember the song. There's a lot in music that is untried. Well, all those commercials and all. Reckless there has just had a big payday when he the whole wide world was picked up by Expedia. And so you've got to attract the attention of the public. You've got to say something to them that you should try this. Just have a listen. And if you don't like it, fine. But get people to listen. That initial get people to listen is the essence of it for me.
Thanks ever so much, it's been incredible. I've come down from South Wales. Just really quickly before I get to my question, 10 years ago we had an under-8s football team in my village called Glynneath. We didn't know what to call them, so we just called them the under-8s blockheads. And Norman Watroy got in touch with us on Twitter, and they gave us a full kit with the blockheads logo and everything. Yeah. Barney Bubbles logo. So now there's like this enclave of industrial South Wales running around playing stiff records because they had the blockheads logo on their football tops and everything. I was wondering when Madness broke in the late 70s, I've always wondered why the ska revival took off more in the Midlands, in Coventry, with the Beat, the Selector, Two-Tone, Jerry Dammers, and why outside of Bad Manners and outside of the Body Snatchers, were you actively looking for another Madness in London and the South East, or were they just a complete one-off that just weren't able to be replicated, or were there other bands that were worthy of them but just weren't that good enough?
I thought, thank you for that question. I thought that musical movements move around, you have everybody's excited by this kind of sound and then everyone gets excited by this kind of sound. But out of each musical movement, one or two bands stay with the movement. They don't change, they don't move on. They kind of become the movement of that particular style. And so I'm always looking for the people that have that essence of that musical form. Madness, had a bit of ska early, and there was a lot of what they did, but they had more to it. They had more, for me, knowing them as I gradually did, they had more talent, really, than just the music. They had an awful lot of... Ian Dury was a great actor, and that's one of the reasons why you see he had great vision in the lyrics, but then he acted them out. Madness had that thing always for me. It was the kind of, all seven of them were fantastic, unusually into a certain kind of element. I wondered about Camden Town generally. I did some research in Camden Town and found that it's one of the top solo parent bits of English kind of culture. A lot of the people in Camden Town were brought up by one or other parent rather than two, and that seems to make a difference. It seems to make a difference that if you're filming and you're recording, you can use that difference to their advantage and also obviously yourself. It's something fascinating. It's why are Madness still going and probably bigger than they were at the time is because generations have bought into that sound and that style. I mean, they're fantastic.
We'll have security on stage here.
Short legs is on stage. Get your tongue out of my arse. When I was going to talk about the first gig. Oh, God.
1, 2, talking sex abusers. Right, this is especially for the 3 ladies at the front. Sorry, 2 ladies, one's a bloke. Excuse me, that's being very sexist. Dave.
Yes.
The very first gig was the Clarendon Ballroom. It was your wedding, wasn't it? Yeah. And it was Elvis Costello's birthday. And we all gave him the bumps and all that. But I was meant to meet my missus at the tube station, whatever it was. And it was Ships in the Night. And she turned up and she missed it. It's one of my biggest regrets. But, Do you know what it was? It was outrageous. But I can't remember. I've lost my thread. Dave. Well, I'm over 60. It's allowed. Who the fuck? Who? You look like him. Yeah. Is that your? That's your son.
I have another question here. There was a guy. Yeah, I go quick.
Yeah, Myra, how do you get paid? They say behind every good man or whatever, good woman. So.
You got that the wrong way round. Andy, put it in there.
But you've made reference to your wife a few times. What influence has she had on you and your career?
Dave, how great is Rosie?
Well, in obviously I'm somewhat biased, but very talented person, and I think I had an opinion about 6 months ago, but she poo-pooed it, so I've gone along with whatever is happening. But she was a great film editor, and big help to me as you have to be. You know, being in the record industry means you've got no time for nothing else. It's like if you're into music, you're kind of stuck. It's forever. You know, that's the problem. I'm still banging it here because, you know, music gets you. You know, it's the thing. You don't dare say that.
Dave, my last question of the night, Dave Robinson. One of my best mates is one of the best musicians in my life in the world. He's in his 30s. He is thinking about giving up. He's just been picked up by Radio 1. Should he carry on, or should he think about another alternative?
Well, I think if you're into the music, as I say, it's forever. There is a business. There's no doubt that, you know, some people we all know have made fortunes out of music, but it requires you to get to quite a high level, and it requires you to have a kind of a team who really understand what it's all about. However, having a team means that they're all got a percentage of you, and an awful lot of people have done well, but haven't had anything from it. As somebody once said to me, they said, it's horrible to have the fame without the fortune.
I've got time for one more question here. Or I'll do both of you if you can both be quick, alright?
Dave, was there any bands or artists that you regret not signing or you missed out on?
Yes, well, there certainly are. Thinking about the UK, the Stray Cats came from America. My missus, their mother, those two, she said, you know, it's going quite well, but you never take a family holiday. And I said, well, I will, you know, as you do. And for that week, I had noticed, for example, that Madness fans were kind of growing their hair a bit more forward. That kind of skinhead item that went on for quite a while, I suddenly started to have this mullet kind of hair thing. And I got this idea that that rockabilly, it's kind of psycho rockabilly might be something I was interested in. I like, you know, I like that Chuck Berry and that Fats Domino area. And so I went on holiday for a week, and the Stray Cats came to sit in Stiff's reception area for 2 of those days, and they had those huge quiffs. Do you remember that? Do you remember that kind of shape? Now, my general manager, God bless him, Paul Conroy, he's still around, and he's gone on to a great, he ran Virgin, and he's done a lot of really good things. But his father was a police inspector, and I think he was influenced against Teddy Boys. So he found that the Stray Cats were kind of rampant Teddy Boys, and he wanted to get them out of our reception. When I came back from my skiing holiday with Lee Thompson, You broke my leg. I was given a cassette that the band had left behind, and I put on one number. I thought, I've got to have this band. These are incredible. I've got to have them. And it turned out that at that point, Arista had kind of got a grip on them, and I lost them that way.
Clive Davis. Can I just follow up? So is that what then influenced you to sign King Kurt?
Where's the microphone?
Is that what influenced you to sign King Kurt?
No. I thought King Kurt had the makings as well. They were well off. They were well over the top. They had a lot of real style. And we didn't, for whatever reason, kind of get them going. But I thought that's the business. Yeah. Now that you hear them, when you hear some of that stuff, you think, "Oh, they're pretty good, aren't you?"
Right. I've got the last question here.
Dave, pre-Stiff, Hope and Anchor. How important was the Hope and Anchor to you and to setting up Stiff?
Well, it was a lot of the early kind of ideas. I had a studio there. I recorded all the bands downstairs. That was the idea, and I had an awful lot of tapes from there that I thought could go on to be interesting music. So the Hope and Anchor was a big thing. I mean, to get it going. The Hope and Anchor was a typical Victorian pub with arched stonework and very big pillars. It was a kind of vaulted, very cold. To keep the beer cold, there wasn't a refrigeration. There was the cold brick work. But it meant that the most people we could get in there, when I got in there and started putting bands in there, the most people you could get in was about 60 people. So one night, Fred, the landlord, and myself got an idea, and we got a Kango hammer, and we knocked out all the pillars in the basement. We had some pillars made with a flat top and steel pillars. But when I went upstairs, when we put the pillars in, we knocked them all, middle of the night, knocked them out. I went upstairs and I couldn't open any of the doors. And so we had to get back down and get the nagras, those kind of screw things that you hold up joists with, and put some bricks in, right? Every time I go to the Hope and Anchor now, I look up. Because, it's one of those kind of situations. But that allowed us to have 150 people in there, and that's what made it. And then I worked on the idea that we would have a never-ending festival. The street that the pub is on, it's called Upper Street. So we had a never-ending amount of the Upper Street festival, music festival, and it was marvelous. So it had a great effect. And if you look at the videos, we made so many videos in the Hope and Anchor. Yeah. 5 or 6 of the biggest, funniest, damned videos. Yes, the Hope and Anchor is great. Yeah. I still love it.
Right, well, you heard how Shane McGowan charged people £75 for their birthday. Well, you paid £15 for Dave's birthday. It's in 4 days, so happy birthday, Dave. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.